Hello, everybody. Yes, how are we all doing? It is the Fredders 93 here, and welcome back to another edition of Football with Fredders, the weekly football chat and discussion show here on the channel. Now, you may have seen from the Bundesliga recap predictions that they didn't exactly go to plan or the way that I thought they would. Anyway, so I thought let's look back in my Premier League predictions, but I'm not going to do this alone. That's right. He is back once again. This was the video he was supposed to come back for in the first place before the whole the whole thing with Chelsea a couple of weeks back. So please welcome back HLF Gaming's very own Hazaro60. Welcome back.
Hi everyone. Yeah, great to be back, Fred, for a third time. As I say, I love this part of your this series within your channel. So I'm always happy to give my little opinion within Football with Fredders. So great to be back.
So when I looked at the Bundesliga predictions, I got 1 out of 18. But then obviously that's going to be an easy one because anyone was always going to predict that the Bayern Munich would be top of the table in the Bundesliga at this point. Without trying to give too much away in current positionings, what's your thoughts on this season so far? I know it's been slightly different to the usual, but of course in these times at the minute,
of course,
is that feeling sort of mutual?
Yeah, well, we were discussing before starting this, weren't we, Fred? There's so much unprecedented times. There's so much difference going on. It's just been a absolute roller coaster of a ride of a season, which, as any fan should appreciate, it makes for good football, makes for that uncertainty that you want. You want that weekly feeling of, oh, I really hope we win this game, and you've got to put in the effort, and these players are really trying hard. But I definitely agree with you. It's something quite difficult to predict, but you've given it a good go, Fred.
Indeed. Speaking of predictions and thinking back to last week, I know it'll be about at least a couple of days before this video comes out. This has been recorded on the Monday night, but I feel bad congratulate myself for getting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers spot on for winning the Super Bowl.
Yes,
I know you were backing the Chiefs yourself personally, but it was still an entertaining match for the neutral, nevertheless.
Definitely, yeah. It was from a neutral point of view, it was a game that was very much in Tampa Bay Buccaneers' favor, and it was good to see them really rolling with form and taking the Super Bowl in their whole stride. And it was a good game to watch.
Yeah. Now, I want to stress as well, this video is being recorded before the result has come in from the Crystal Palace Leeds game, but because where they are in the table is quite bunched in, quite close together, we're going to roll with that as it is, but it might make a little bit of a difference. It might not. I'm thinking with a ladder, personally. So I think what better place to start than to take a look at my predictions for the top 4 in the Champions League places. And reading back, I can see I'm off to an excellent start. So my predictions were Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, and Man United. And who do we actually have there? Man City, Man United, Leicester, and Liverpool. So weren't far off on 3 out of 4, but I still score a 0 out of 4 for that.
Yeah, but still, unfortunately, Fred, as you say, you got 3 of the big 6 up there. Leicester obviously playing fantastically well. They're still a great team and they're still fighting hard. Chelsea, well, since we've got Tuchel in managing, we haven't lost a game, so that's a great statistic for us at the moment. It's still got, in my opinion, we've still got time to make up that deficit. Chelsea obviously are in some form of form. I mean, the game on Sunday night against Sheffield United was a bit closer than I probably would have wanted as a Chelsea fan, but you take a win, you take them 3 points. And as I say, the fact that Thomas Tuchel has not lost a match under Chelsea since this video has come out, being their manager, it's good. It's obviously something positive to take away.
Let's watch Chelsea lose to Barnsley in a couple of hours after this goes out. I kid, of course. Now, 5th and 7th, I was thinking sort of like towards the Europa League places, completely forgetting of the launch of the UEFA Conference League. So 7th maybe in that. It's hard to say. It depends on the finals in the cup competitions.
Of
But
course.
but I predicted for this Tottenham Hotspur, Arsenal, and Leicester for 5th, 6th, 7th. We actually have Chelsea, West Ham, and Everton. So not even close.
Yeah,
Not
well,
even close.
unfortunately, Fred, again, it's just so unprecedented times. It's hard to predict with injuries. I mean, Harry Kane obviously is a big name that comes straight to my mind. The fact that he's been out a few games and he's obviously having quite a bit of a tricky season. Well, him not personally, but Tottenham just in general. I mean, they obviously aren't up there in the top 7 at the moment. I think where are they at the moment, Fred? They
They
9.
That's coming up.
Oh, it's coming
That's
up
coming
next. Okay.
up.
Okay, cool. But even so, you've got to give props to teams like Everton that are actually playing quite well. They're not a team that you can just think, oh, that of the big 6 would think, oh, we're going to win that week. So yeah, it's the great thing of the Premier League, this unpredictability.
A theme that's going to develop as this video goes on is you sort of like think of where teams should be, but then if they do hit sort of like a purple patch in form, with the 8 other teams that have been at the top of the table at some stage before Man City, then it is like shocking to see just how quickly they can slide down, which I'm sure something you'll agree with.
Definitely.
Right, so 8th to 10th, I put down Wolverhampton Wanderers, Everton, and Southampton. And this is where we actually see Tottenham Hotspur, Aston Villa, and Arsenal. I think what I was speaking about just now, about certain big teams hitting purple patches of form, Arsenal in particular for most of the season, that sort of explanation really does come out at that point, doesn't it?
Hugely so. Yeah, I think Arsenal are just a team that you expect to be up there in the top tier, like top 6 always, and where they are at the moment is just it's shocking. It's actually quite disappointing, I think, for Arsenal fans and just in general, like their squad isn't playing. I mean, Saka as a young player, he is fantastic. He's probably their only one saving grace this season, and he's obviously come into form. But apart from that, as I was saying in the previous video I was in, Fred, one player does not make a team, does he? So
exactly. I know that in recent weeks, Arsenal have had the emergence of, like you said, Bukayo Saka and Emile Smith Rowe as
yes.
well. But up until that point, they were 16th.
Mm-hmm.
How Arteta stayed in his job with that, and Chelsea sacked Lampard for a few bad results, we just don't know. Maybe Stan Kroenke's keeping his money interests sort of elsewhere, like any other club owner probably is at the moment.
But do you think Stankowski, the amount of times that people pleaded for Arsene Wenger to be kicked out of the managerial post, and he never did? Well, he just stayed and was given that position. So fingers crossed, Arteta does get that opportunity. Obviously, being a previous player for Arsenal and just a legend for the club, I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon.
I mean, this is still his first proper managerial gig. He'd
Of course,
just
yeah.
been Pep's assistant at City up till that point.
Yeah, definitely. So it's obviously a learning curve for him, and I mean, unless somehow Arsenal get relegated, just look back on this video at the end of the season of me laughing at this. But unless something extreme like that happens, I don't see Arteta having any issue. Obviously, there'll be a view of he's got to improve, but that's the case with any managerial position.
It's only natural, isn't it? Right, so I'm going to do the next 5 clubs all together. So I'm going from 11th to 15th at this point, and this is where cracks start to form even deeper. So I put Burnley, Newcastle, West Ham, Palace, and Leeds for like 11th to 15th. We've actually got Leeds, Southampton, Palace, Wolves, and Brighton.
Well, it's it, as I say, Fred, it's just such a difficult thing to predict through and through to get every position right. But at least you're in the ballpark. You got a few teams in them areas. I mean, I think we expected Wolves to not do like how they are doing. So yeah, that's something that you just have to take on the chin.
Leeds, despite the fact this is their first season in the Premier League since the 03-04 season, I think I've done a great job getting to mid-table. I mean, you just need to watch Leeds player. Like, I know, obviously, having played them twice, so I've certainly seen them twice. Let the sort of style that Leeds have under Marcelo Bielsa, you've just got to admire it in the Premier
Of
League
course you have.
to a
Of
point,
course
haven't
you
you?
have. It's like it reminds me of the Leicester triumph when they won the season back. Was it
15, 16.
15, 16? Thank you, Fred. But yeah, again, it's just when you get a team that works so well with their manager, it doesn't need to be this big, like they have all these big money players. It's the fact that they work well as a squad and they, as you say, they have been playing excellently for just coming up to the Premier League, and it just shows that they deserve to be there.
So 16th and 17th, I had down sort of Brighton and Hove Albion, sort of with the manager's hipster's choice, Graham Potter, and also Sheffield United, because just purely believing that second season syndrome is a thing with Sheffield United. We're certainly seeing that
Yeah.
at this present moment in time. But what we actually have is Newcastle and Burnley.
Well, you won at the weekend, didn't you, Fred? You won against Southampton. So
that's two out of the last three being wins.
two last three being wins. As we spoke about last time, it's about having at least a few wins every few games, and there's still time to go. So I don't think that you are probably as frustrated as you were maybe about a month ago.
Something like
So
that.
yeah, it's definitely something to consider.
I think having Saint Maximan and Lascelles before he got injured again back from obviously where they've suffered longly from COVID, and Newcastle's always go through a lot of injuries. We had the biggest sort of hit when it came to COVID, and even now after the weekend, we just lost 3 players to injury. Manquillo and Wilson having to get subbed off before Hendrick's red card, and then we lose Fabian Schär in the last sort of 15 minutes, and it's just been confirmed he's out for several months.
It's
having done his ligaments in.
It's very unfortunate, as you say, and unless you've got a really deep squad, which unfortunately for Newcastle, they have a few players, but they haven't got the big players that are going to be able to turn up week in, week out. When you compare Newcastle to like the big 6. So just in this case, obviously being a Chelsea fan, when I think about the depth of Chelsea's squad, you can rest assured that if a player goes out injured, you've got a player and then another reserve after that to even go deep into that like position. So it is a very difficult thing to compare, and as you say, it will have that impact on your next few games.
From a Newcastle fan perspective, and from anyone else's perspective, really, when you start looking up sort of like the amount of goal contributions that Callum Wilson's had for us this season, the last thing that we need is this injury. Bearing in mind our options are Carroll, who's only scored once since he's come back, and I think remembering right from the commentary in the Leicester game, it was his first Newcastle goal in 10 years. But then you sort of think, well, he's had a spell at Liverpool and West Ham in that time, so you can't really judge him too much for that. Dwight Gale, Bruce doesn't seem to like bringing off the pitch for some games, or if he does, it's in the last 10 minutes or so. And then there's Joe Linton.
Joe Linton,
who bless the lad. I know he's been in the headlines for the wrong reasons lately from nipping off the barbers. As much of a good work rate he can pull off, he's always going to be judged quite badly from where I feel we quite seriously overpaid
Unfortunately,
for Joe
so
Linton. How
yes.
Mike Ashley or Lee Charney or anyone like that saw 40 million for Joe Linton, I'll never know.
Yeah, no, it's a very much something to be looked at in the future and think how on earth. I mean, yeah, but it's a gamble, isn't it? It's whether or not he was going to work fantastically well with the squad. Someone somewhere was convinced that he was going to be the star that you guys needed. So that gamble, unfortunately, for as you say, bless the lad, it's a lot of pressure to go on to come into a Premier League squad and be thrown around in so many positions. Do you know what I mean? To just try and find your form, that it does make that difference. It's the scary thing to try and be as good as everyone expects you to be all the time. So
especially when you're handed probably one of, well, I'm going to say this, probably one of the more sacred football shirts football shirts in the sport, the number 9 shirt at Newcastle.
Yeah, number 9 at Newcastle should have been
It's
retired.
It's a massive responsibility to
Hugely so.
have. But let's see how it did with the bottom 3, shall we? And reading one name, I know I'm getting off to a great start. In 18th, I've put Villa. And then 19th, I had West Brom and Fulham. And we all know the current bottom 3 is Fulham, West Brom, and Sheffield United. So I can confirm 1 out of 20.
But let's just take a moment to talk about Aston Villa, okay, Fred, and the fact that they are a really, really strong team. I mean, like Ollie Watson, and
yeah, I'll say you just look at the squad. Watkins,
sorry,
Traore,
yeah,
Emiliano Martinez coming in from Arsenal. Even could you possibly make a point about Ross Barkley?
Oh yeah. You talk about Ross Barkley being there as well, because as the moment he got there, he was feeling so like enthusiastic to play for the squad. Like I'm sure he scored a couple of goals there. It might
something
be
like
more.
That, yeah.
It's roughly 2 or 3. Sorry, my statistics have gone, but yeah, Ross Barkley again, like he's fantastic for that squad. I think he's linking up very well with. I keep going back to Jack Grealish because I think he's a fantastic player for them. And yeah, it's again we talk about a young squad and then wanting to take that opportunity to do really well coming into the well, they've obviously been in the Premier League for a while, but yeah, it's great. It's great to see them battling and making us think, oh, we can't just think that Aston Villa is going to be a team that's going to be fighting for relegation, because they're definitely not.
Like I know how closely they came, like how closely they did come to going down last season. Like they barely scraped it at the last day of the season, and so my initial thinking was possibly second season syndrome. But I think they had brought in quite a few players after that video came out, and then obviously the topsy-turvy thing with the Premier League this season, as we've touched on many a time in this video, the form of Watkins, and that 7-2 win over Liverpool may or may not have helped them as well.
Just slightly. I mean, yeah, they are really a team that you would be cautious to come up against. They've shown that they can come out and really do damage and face big clubs very well. So they're a great squad.
I'm just looking at my screen thinking next time I might do a Matt Hancock drape a Newcastle shirt across there, like he does with his bookcase. Any final thoughts?
I think
this
Fred,
league is a season.
I think Fred, that this is something that you will need to review again right at the end of the season, because I still think there's so much unpredictability about what's going to happen. I mean, when you look at Liverpool's last few games, they've really not been on form. They could shock us all and not be up there in the top 4. Personally, I'm putting that out there now and thinking, actually, we've got time to go. as I said, as a Chelsea fan, I'm feeling very positive about where we're heading, where we're winning a few more games and drawing, and just we've got some games ahead that might be a bit tricky. But overall, I think that there's so much that could happen.
I'm just going to touch on this one thing really quickly. Well, a couple of things really quickly before we sign off, if that's all right.
Of course.
So first of all, the whole thing with Liverpool, like losing Van Dijk, Gomez, and Matip for the rest of the season. I know they've just brought in Ben Davies from Preston. Everyone's sort of like a bit of umming about it. And they had brought Kabak in as well from Schalke, and like as a follower of the Bundesliga, I can tell you he's a good sort of like up and coming centre back. It's just a shame that Schalke are having the season that they've had, stuck rock bottom to the Bundesliga. But you got to feel for any centre back who's up and coming at Liverpool, seeing Fabinho and Henderson being played over them at centre back. They probably got to feel at some point they may as well not bother, or is that a bit harsh of a thing to say?
No, I think you've got a point there, Fred. I think it's Jurgen Klopp's obviously got his favourites. Like, that's just the case. You know, he's obviously been with the club for a while, and he's got these players that he feels he can rely on, and he thinks Liverpool are like his players are. They're very good players, obviously. Like they obviously play week in, week out, and up there still in the top four. But as you say, it is a case of it's letting these new players that they've brought in for a reason the opportunity to play, and one way or another Jurgen Klopp's going to learn that he can't just think, oh, I'll just reposition the players to make sure nothing changes. That can't happen, and it won't make a functioning team.
And just finally, Mike Dean's been in the news sort of like after the last week that we've just had. It's come out on the day of recording that he has actually asked to not even be considered for any of the games for officiating this weekend because of any like the abuse and the things sort of said to him after this last week's worth of games, in particular the Man U Southampton game from Bednarek's red card and the West Ham Fulham game on Souček's red card.
Yeah, of course.
It's a hard thing.
Of course it is.
Being refs. And of course you're looking at someone who's experienced in the game with Mike Dean. I mean, yeah, they're prone to errors now and again, even with the technology, but some fans just don't need to take that step too far.
No, unfortunately, Fred, it's a case that the realism of the professional game and how much of an impact it has on people's lives, people forget how important sport is. Sport is a very important thing, and people love and follow sport, and it is a big aspect of their life. However, when it then impacts the officials and impacts the players and the just general people involved within the sport, it's taken too far. That's uncalled for. Obviously, we both will sit here and we could discuss for hours about the issues around what's happened with Mike Dean and whether or not he feels that he's whether or not fans think he's doing the right thing. He's the professional. He's the one with the badge. He's the one that's done the courses and can referee in the Premier League as he has done for many, many, many years. So it's a very much a case that unfortunately he does have that impact on people's lives. Might not be direct, but then that doesn't mean that they get the opportunity to directly impact his life and his livelihood. And yeah, it's a very tricky subject to be able to touch on.
Interesting. So this is going to be a slightly longer episode this week, but obviously, as well as looking back at this predictions, there has been quite a bit this week that we just could not touch on. So thank you for sticking around at this point if you have, but that is going to do it for this week on Football with Redders. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Do keep leaving those likes, subscribe if you're new, sub the Hazard060, and not forgetting Lloyd of Sharp Racing, because he's back. And HLF Gaming as well. Of course, we should have more content coming up in 2021. follow the social medias in my description, and then we'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Thanks, Fredders. Bye.